whether apparently he didn't inherit the taint, but anyway, he was always a little goofy, and he was really a drunk. If he didn't have his 2 quarts of whiskey a day, he really didn't know where he was. And during the great Blitz of London, most people thought he was, being very brave, staying in London during the Blitzkrieg.
Well, that's where his 2 quarts of whiskey were.
Well, he was 8 stories down. They built him a special shelter, 8 stories down in the ground, a very comfortable room, and he was liberally supplied with whiskey. And in fact, they used to show this room, but a historian named David Irving did a new biography of Winston Churchill, and he was an establishment historian. He was published by Macmillan, which is owned by the Rothschilds. And so he sent this new biography of Churchill to the offices of Macmillan, in which he went in at some length about how this old drunk slept out the war in this special room underneath London. And they said, "Oh, no, you can't print that." And he said, "Well, that's the key to my whole biography." And so they said, "Well, goodbye," and they refused to print the book. And he finally got it out on his own, and he started touring and lecturing on some of his discoveries, with the result that Canada officially banned him from entering Canada as a very dangerous person, because he was telling the truth about Winston Churchill. And they have riots when he speaks, and it's all very exciting.
We're talking with Eustace Mullins today, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the book. It's The World Order and it's about our secret rulers. It's extremely, extremely important that we understand what is happening in America today, because we do have a $4 trillion debt. The nation is on its way down. We've become a third world entity. And we used to be the finest, the strongest, the most industrialized, the #1 nation in the world. And our education system also used to be the very best. We're having severe problems, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why Bobby Lee is here today with Eustace Mullins, one of the patriots and the heroes of the truth and the Jeffersonian philosophy of government. So this is the book that I think that you must have in your possession in order to become educated about the world order. The business of America, what really, when we're talking about the business of America, what is the business of America? I thought it was for little businesses to be able to start and to work hard and to progress, and for a small family to be able to build themselves up and become financially successful and with morals and ethics, and everybody work for the common good. Is that the way that business is done in the government today?
No, that's the myth. But we, unfortunately, you and I are talking here today about the reality. We could talk about myths all evening if we wished, but if we're going to talk about reality, then we have to say that this is a soap opera from Hollywood, the American dream. What we are facing today is the American nightmare, a wholly owned colony dictated to by aliens, in which the chance of a young person today of making it is almost nil, unless he happens to be a scion of one of the insider world order dynastic families, as George Bush was. Now, George Bush, of course, his path was smooth. He was a member of the Brotherhood of Death from Yale University. And we were so lucky to have him replaced by Bill Clinton, apparently from Middle America, the heartland of America, a Rockefeller protege, a Rhodes Scholar. There's never been a Rhodes Scholar. They're the Rothschild Scholars, but they didn't want to call themselves Rothschild Scholars, so they named themselves Rhodes Scholars. So we have now in Washington Bill Clinton, a Rothschild Scholar and Rockefeller protege. You know, the Washington Post on June 21st explained the sudden meteoric rise of Bill Clinton when you had all these people contending for the presidential nomination in the Democratic Party, and they all looked equally qualified, they all looked equally stupid, and which would satisfy the American people.
And they were all lawyers.
And they were all lawyers, and they were all proteges and insiders. You had Albert Gore, whose family has lived off of largesse from Arm & Hammer for many years, the founder of the Communist Party of the United States, and this has all been printed in the Washington Post and many other places. So suddenly the Rockefellers said, well, it's time for the show to be over, and so Senator J. Rockefeller and David Rockefeller notified them, Clinton is the man, I want all you other people to disappear. And so Clinton came forth as #1 Rockefeller choice.
You know, it's amazing. Of course, you know, to me, from changing from George Herbert Walker Bush to Bill Clinton is just like leaving the soiled diaper on the baby and just changing the safety pin.
Well, very good analysis.
But it was money bought and paid for, as you know, and Jackson Stevens loaned Bill Clinton $2 million, and that was back in, I believe, around February or so, and Bill Clinton was really kind of almost getting down towards the bottom of the heap of those 7 individuals that at first had decided to run for President of the United States on the Democratic ticket, and all of a sudden he had this money. He came into Georgia, he had 26 people that he employed as far as being front people, and pretty soon he took Georgia in the South, and he was well on his way, and I think that was pretty close to it. But he was bought and paid for, you're saying. You're saying that Bill Clinton himself is bought and paid for, and are you telling me that we voted for a change, and the change isn't going to come to our benefit, Eustace?
Well, that reminds me of a story I heard in my small town in Virginia. And these 2 businessmen were talking, and one of them had a bill that he wanted to be approved in Congress. And he said, I wonder if I couldn't influence Congressman so-and-so in Washington to vote for this bill if I, you know, just bought him. And the other man said, don't be ridiculous. That's the most insulting thing I ever heard of. He said, Congressman so-and-so was bought and paid for long before he ever got to Washington.
and that's an honest congressman. Once he's bought and paid for, you know, he stays bought and paid for.
Absolutely. He goes off the block. He's no longer available.
Right. We're coming to today, and we're coming from George Bush to Bill Clinton. What do you see in the future for America for the next 10 years, Eustace Mullins? This new world order, is it taking shape, or do you think that all of a sudden we're going to come to critical mass and it's all going to disintegrate before our very eyes?
Well, I think we're at critical mass already. Now, we have a very interesting situation, which we saw during the last election. You had the biggest turnout that you ever had, and of course, the trend had been for lower and lower percentages of the American people to come out and vote, because they did everything that they possibly could to discourage the American people from participating in the election. Fewer people voted every year because, you know, they made sure they understood you either vote for Tweedledum or Tweedledee, and it doesn't make any difference which one gets in, because we created them both out of nothing, just like the Federal Reserve creates money out of nothing, and we create these politicians out of nothing. And when you look at them, you can see that they come from nothing. There's no question.
Absolutely nothing.
There's no question about that in anyone's mind. Well, this time, you suddenly had a wild card, and that was a billionaire named Perot. He appeared on the scene, and he was almost elected president by acclamation. People were so disgusted with these phonies, Bush and Clinton, and no matter how hard you tried, you couldn't say anything good about either one of them. And so the people looked, and here's a successful businessman, Perot, spunky, got down to business. He would get on television and rivet the attention of the American audience simply with a few charts, which has always been a no-no in politics. You never show a chart to the people if you want to get votes.
Well, you never tell them how it's really like.
That's right, and you never tell them, look, we're destitute, we've got to start thinking of something, because you see, the Rothschilds and the world order dynastic families, they profit by other people's suffering and despair. They profit when you have a communist revolution go in and murder 10 million peasants.